Do is just to talk to you a little bit about my life growing up within such a family, and we'll talk about what they are. My grandfather, his name was James Owen Marsland, he was a British diplomat. You all know it as MI6. He called it the Secret Intelligence Service, the SIS. He received the OBE, the MBE, the C.B.E. He was offered a knighthood to be one of the Templars and turned that down. And one of his views was the public can't even go to the toilet without our help. Okay? And then he said, the politician, this is during speeches at dinner that he would give, the politician is only concerned with the next election, the diplomat with the next generation. By their nature, the politician is beholden to the public and must inform them, but the public must never know. They are incapable of making the right decisions. We do that for them. So the point here is that a group of people are already putting themselves above the vast electorate. Right, very quickly. My grandfather went off to India in 1932. He was working in a cotton mill, and there was a rebellion to try and throw the British out of India. He took some heroic action, which I'm not going to go into now. And as a result of that, he was awarded the OBE and what we in the family call the appointment. The appointment is his joining what we would call MI6. But in those days, it wasn't called MI6. I think it was only called MI6 in the late 1930s. So we always referred to it as the appointment because we would never discuss it. Those of you who have perhaps seen any of my other talks, my grandfather was instrumental in removing the then king. The king who was having an affair with Wallis Simpson. The story is that the church and the government could not allow this because she was a divorcee, and therefore the king sort of abdicated. Well, that's not what my grandfather told me. Grandfather told me that Wallis Simpson was having an affair with a guy called von Ribbentrop, who was a Nazi. He was actually in the the German embassy in London. And although Wallis Simpson wasn't an active spy for the Nazis, she was passing documents across to him from the king. Believe it or not, it was the CID that actually, or the special branch, that actually spotted this, went to the then Prime Minister and said, you can't have this, the king's got to go. The Prime Minister couldn't come to a decision, so he went to his friends in the Illuminati and said, what do I do? So the Illuminati said, if you're not big enough to make the decision, form a jury. 12 men. We will nominate those men and they will vote on whether the king stays or goes. Then you can go back to the king and say the country has no confidence in you. My grandfather was one of the 12. He was based in India, and he said in those days you had to be very careful because all information came from telegrams and they could break codes very easy. Remember, this is long before Enigma was up and running. So he had a telegram which basically said in code, should the king stay or go? And I asked my grandfather, what did you vote? And grandfather said, I voted that the king should go. And I said, what was the vote? What was the score? And he said, 10 voted for the king to go, 2 to stay. So the Prime Minister then went back to the king and said, your country has no confidence in you. I understand that the king said, I want to go on BBC Radio, World Service, and tell everybody, Home Service, what's happened. And he was told, no, the BBC have orders to lock the doors to keep you out. You can't be king. And my grandfather, being a very materialistic man, because he was very much part of the Illuminati, was always upset because anybody who took part in the vote was given a token of this great momentous act that they'd been involved in. And he was given a coin, which was from British West Africa, one of the few coins that was struck bearing Edward VIII logo, but not the head of the king. Grandfather said to me, had he been based in Europe, he would have received either a penny, or what we have then in those days, a threepenny piece. And I think they go for £250,000 now. And he was always really miffed that because where he was based, he didn't get a British coin. And I brought that coin for you today to have a look at. He gave that to me. It was just a token. When you are in the Illuminati, you tend to believe very much in tokens, whether they are colours, signs, or numbers, or magical symbols. He returned to Britain. He worked to persuade the United States of America to join the war against Hitler. It was a very big campaign to get the Americans to come into the war because they were on their isolationist policy, and he took a lead in that. War was declared on the 3rd of September. On the day war was declared, my grandfather was offered, do you want to have an officer, serve in the army, or do you want to do this commission and be in a diplomatic post? Grandfather accepted the post of Vice-Consul. He was at the British Embassy in Pondicherry in India. And the amazing thing is, it didn't take him long to get him out. He was told, we can't afford a stray bomb to kill you, we're going to get you out now. He was put on an ordinary passenger boat with a destroyer as an escort, and he left just less than a week after war was declared. When he got there, he decided that he wanted his wife and children to be sent to India, so yep, another destroyer was sent, and this time the family was brought out to him. He was given under strength platoon of Gurkha bodyguards, and this caused a lot of aggro, and because the Gurkhas were there to protect him, not the British ambassador, nor the property of the ambassador, but to protect my grandfather. And then within a short time, my grandfather was promoted to British Consul. After the war, India gained independence, and my grandfather was posted to other countries. He particularly spent a lot of time in America and France, which explained why he never said trousers, but pants. He would have a lot of Americanisms because he associated an awful lot which would become the American CIA. He also met Stalin in 1947. That was particularly to talk about Roswell. At that time, the Americans were not sharing any information with the British, and my grandfather was dispatched to Stalin because it was felt Stalin had infiltrated the CIA or the American intelligence and would have the info. Stalin's reply to my grandfather was, give me 10 years and I will have infiltrated the CIA. And grandfather did not come back with any information. And then he was awarded the MBE. He returned to the United Kingdom and was awarded the Commander of the British Empire, the C.B.E, which he was very proud of because it was the British Empire. He then had a falling out with the British Prime Minister. I think that was Clement Attlee, but grandfather was very, very tight-lipped on this. He offered and accepted a post as Britain's representative to the United Nations. So grandfather was out there doing trade deals. But this was really a cover, so he could still have a diplomatic passport, move all over the world. He retired from diplomatic life in 1961, but he remained an active member of the SIS, MI6, where he met JFK just before he retired. And then he went on to retire in 1965. He declined a knighthood, but he accepted a companion, became a companion. It's interesting. When he left, he was offered stocks and shares in Rolls-Royce. So his gift to keep quiet was, what do you want? He said, shares. Rolls-Royce, not the motor car, the engine. He knew a big deal was due with McDonnell Douglas, the American aircraft company, and the deal was that they had to have British engines in the American aircraft. Otherwise, the British government felt it couldn't accept it. These were going to be Rolls-Royce engines, and my grandfather, inside the dealing, knew about that. I want shares in those. He also went to Mappin and Webb's, which is one of the premier jeweller shops on Regent Street, and was allowed to walk around the store after hours and choose whichever silverware he wanted. He was told that there'd be no record of him showing British government involvement, and for that reason he did not get a civil servant pension. He didn't even get an ordinary state pension because they wanted no records, and that's why he got the stocks and shares. He was meant to live on those. So no pension for him because they did not want him. And we have got some records. So I've got the coin if you want to have a look at it. Edward VIII, King of India and the motherland. This was the alliance that never was, 1937. Here is the then deposed king being greeted by Hitler, and that is Wallace Simpson, and this says it all. So you've got that Adolf Hitler treating him as if he was the king. And for those of you, it's not part of my talk, but I'll just quickly say, for those of you who ever wondered why Rudolf Hess made that strange flight to Scotland, this was all linked in it. The landed families were on the point of doing a deal, and you do have to thank Winston Churchill for preventing a takeover. Winston Churchill would not fall in with the plan. This is a photo shot from a computer screen showing my grandfather. I got this from the records office, having been told nothing existed of him. And if we do that, you look, occupation Vice-Consul. So thank goodness I've got some proof to show not only existed, but he was a diplomat. He was a Vice-Consul. So I'm really pleased to have that. C.B.E, this is the medal that he really, really was proud of because it was for the Empire. My grandfather, very much part of the Empire. He declined a knighthood, was going to be St Michael and St George. He even went for a fitting. And the reason that he was happy with this one at first was because there you have the archangel treading over Satan. So it was death to Satan. However, he didn't like, when he found out, let's have a quick look at that, that in Latin, around the medal, it says a token of a better age, which was then explained to him as a New World Order. So he decided he wasn't going to have any of that.